Cloud Retainer's quest was undoubtedly emotional and one of the top 10 in Genshin in my opinion, and it actually felt quite shocking to see relationships be portrayed in such a touching way in Genshin, considering the game's habit to simply gloss over such things. It was a type of closure that I personally needed, to feel like I'm not insane while seeing her relationship with Shunhe and Ganyu so familial, beyond what is considered master and disciple, despite that being what she calls it. Let us also consider the only kind of explicitly mother-offspring relationships we have had so far, and openly stated, as I recall, were between Alice and Klee, and Wanderer and Raiden. Which, well, Raiden is more like a father who went to get milk, really. One thing about Xianyun is that she knows her daughters perfectly, right down to what they would do if they saw her, which is very evident by her predicting that Ganyu would take the day off to be with her and delay her work. But Xianyun, of course, never wants Ganyu to overwork herself beyond what she already does. She's also evidently a bit too embarrassed and proud to admit that she misses their company, specifically after Shunhe took off as well, and now she was alone in her abode. In the conversation at Wanmin restaurant, she keeps hinting at how she's never bored just by being by herself in her own company, but as soon as Shunhe admits that she's missed her, Cloud Retainer is evidently happy with the news, and flustered as well. Her reason for going in the first place is very endearing. The questions she asks Ganyu about Shunhe's pay, accommodations, boss, everything. She is concerned because she raised her, and though she's not eloquent with her own words as she so claims, everyone who has been with her can tell they're cared for by her actions. Her love language is clearly acts of service. Cloud Retainer is heavily portrayed as a motherly figure, and it is even more emphasized by the cutscene in the end and her own voice lines. She views herself as an elder, a caretaker, and someone with a duty and responsibility to fulfill that role. Reading her story quests or even the way she speaks of gaming, for example, she's someone who is always willing to offer her wisdom and kindness, and has a desire to look after the youth and take them under her wing. It's even more endearing when you read that she repeatedly takes Shunhe to the toy seller in Liyue to find her something that piques her interest. And although Shunhe has yet to find something, Cloud Retainer has yet to stop taking her there. Her way of showing love and care is very beautiful, and is even mentioned by Zhongli. Although I have screenshots of that particular voice line, I cannot recall which event it is from. But in that event, Zhongli talks about a friend that he has, who has multiple daughters, and instead of fretting over them, she prefers to let them find their own way, which very much fits the description of Cloud Retainer, because in her own words, when it is time for them to leave the nest, it is her responsibility to let them do so, and she shall watch out for them from afar. But of course, they will always have a place to return to shall they need it. It is very touching that despite Cloud Retainer not approving initially of the person that Yuandai chose, she saw how happy they were together and how much she loved her. To her, that was enough. Despite the hurt she felt at losing Yuandai, and when she had disguised herself as a merchant, she had decided to let her be in favor of Yuandai pursuing her own happiness. Instead of confronting her, she let her be and tried her best to lengthen her own time as a human. She even went as far as to look out for her granddaughter as well, taking care of her when she had a fever. And a beautiful kind of analogy I noticed as well was Shuyu only willing to trust a fully white crane, despite not knowing Yuandai originally looks like that, and Cloud Retainer even says that she was able to recognize Yuandai's essence without ever fully seeing it. It makes the point where Shunhe and Cloud Retainer meet in Cloud Retainer's human form, and Shunhe immediately recognizing her, it makes it so much more emotional and touching, because she has never seen that form before. And yet, it shows how deep their bond runs, similar to Yuandai and Shuyu, and I was kind of shocked and impressed at the beautiful way they tied these 2 points together. And also the fact that Cloud Retainer is literally so understanding. She never blames them for leaving Mount outsung. She even goes as far as to proclaim that it may be due to a failure of her own, that they all left, but decides to go to Liyue Harbor for them to see why exactly they leave the nest, so to speak. She's never blamed any of them for leaving, or held any anger toward them, which is beautifully portrayed with Yonsei when Cloud Retainer tells her she had not made a mistake, simply a choice, even though Yonsei had not heeded any of her warnings. And when Shuyu gets self-conscious about some of her things and asks Cloud Retainer not to look yet, she respects that and tells her to do what she must. It's a beautiful relationship that she's building on trust and respect and love. It tells you a lot about her and how she treated her other disciples, and kind of gives you the idea why their relationship always runs so deep and why they love her so much. In her voice lines, she makes a map for the traveler so they won't get lost. She offers to cook and notices when the traveler is weary and tells them to sleep. She sews clothes that match her own for Shuyu. She even asks the traveler to check in on Ganyu. She worries and cares, but lets her children grow and is proud of their choices and supportive regardless. All in all, despite initially being seen as a funny character for all her tales about Ganyu and the way she loves to embarrass her kids, she's so incredibly loving and well thought out as a character that her quest could only feel like a warm hug on a cold winter day. She takes pride in seeing her children and who they've become, despite their wrongs and their differences, and never even once stops offering her help or her advice, even sometimes without letting them acknowledge it, so long as she can be set aside to know that they're safe and well. She is very much everything that a mother could be, knowing, loving, and forgiving until the end. And despite her claiming not to be very good with words, her words often reassure those who are around her, and when that fails, her actions shortly follow. She is observant and knows each one of them very well, and thinks of them so often, and then it makes sense that everyone was able to recognize her. Whether it be Shinhe, who has never seen her form before, Ganyu hasn't seen it for years, or Shuyu, who has only once met her in her bird form. And although I would not describe her and Shuyu particularly familial, at least not before the quest ended, maybe there was an aura of sorts that she radiated and she was able to feel it. For all we know, Shuyu is not even human, which makes Shinhe's feat of recognizing Cloud Retainer even more impressive. But in the end, they all know her because their essence is the same. Despite her pride, she's someone who seeks to be with her family and care for them. And no wonder she left for Liyue Harbor shortly after, because she missed them, even if she was not very willing to admit it. It shows how much they too have changed her, and the effort she's willing to make for them, as it took centuries for her to be convinced of making the step. And with all of these things, this is just one facet of her brilliant character, which shows you how loved she was and how well she was made. The quest was, in all honesty, one of the most heartwarming ones, even with a tear-jerking cutscene. I hope you like this so far, and I'm so glad that Genshin's getting better at portraying relationships and dynamics, that you'd be able to feel them so deeply. And with that said, don't forget to like and comment your thoughts, and kindly subscribe if you wish to see me again. And follow my Twitter, I suppose, if you want to see me a little bit unhinged, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye bye!